Have you ever wondered if, behind the glamorous and luxurious facade of hotels, there might be chilling secrets hidden within? In today's video, we're going to uncover 5 terrifying stories you might encounter when staying at a hotel. Things that seem like they belong in horror movies but can actually happen in real life. Be careful, because sometimes the scariest things come from the places you least expect. 1. The haunted history of Majestic Hotel. In the heart of Kuala Lumpur stands the Majestic Hotel, an emblem of colonial elegance and luxury. Constructed in 1932, its architecture harks back to an era of grandeur and opulence. However, beneath its polished exterior lies a chilling history, a shadowy past that lingers in the whispers of the night. During the tumultuous years of the Second World War, the Majestic Hotel was commandeered by Japanese forces and transformed into a transit camp for high-ranking officers. As the war dragged on and the tide turned inexorably against Japan, a palpable sense of dread began to permeate the once bustling halls of the Majestic Hotel. The grand establishment, now a military outpost, vibrated with an almost tangible tension. Whispers of impending defeat spread like wildfire among the ranks, each murmur casting a deeper shadow over the spirits of the officers. These men, once proud and confident, now moved through the corridors with heavy steps and downcast eyes, their minds weighed down by the grim reality of their situation. Among these officers was General Kenji Nakamura, a man who had once epitomized unwavering discipline and stoicism. As the reality of Japan's declining fortunes became undeniable, Nakamura found himself increasingly isolated. The burden of responsibility he carried was immense, his once unshakable resolve now eroded by the relentless tide of bad news. The Majestic Hotel's luxurious surroundings offered no comfort to him. Instead, they stood as a cruel reminder of the stark contrast between the past's glory and the present's despair. Nakamura began to retreat into himself, spending long solitary hours in his quarters, Room 48. The room, with its opulent furnishings and grand views of Kuala Lumpur, became a prison of sorts. It was here, away from the prying eyes of his subordinates, that the full weight of his nation's decline bore down upon him. He would sit for hours at his desk, a single flickering candle casting long shadows across the room, as he pored over maps and dispatches that brought nothing but bad news. The general's once commanding presence had diminished. His shoulders, which had once borne the weight of command with ease, now sagged under the invisible load of defeat. His eyes, sharp and penetrating, were now often clouded with a faraway look, as if he were staring into an abyss that only he could see. The elegant silk curtains, the finely crafted furniture, and the soft glow of the chandelier above seemed almost mocking in their splendor, contrasting sharply with the turmoil within Nakamura's heart. Every evening, he would follow the same ritual, a desperate attempt to find solace. He would pour himself a cup of sake, the clear liquid shimmering in the delicate porcelain, and sit by the window, staring out at the city that stretched beyond the hotel grounds. The sounds of Kuala Lumpur, once a comforting reminder of life beyond the war, now felt distant and hollow. He would sit there, sipping his sake slowly, the bitterness of his thoughts mingling with the drink. The rumors of defeat were no longer just whispers. They had become a deafening roar in Nakamura's mind. Each piece of news that filtered through only served to deepen his despair. He felt the shame of his nation's decline acutely, a gnawing ache that left him restless and unable to find peace. The walls of Room 48, which had once felt like a sanctuary, now seemed to close in on him, the air growing heavier with each passing day. One fateful night, the crushing weight of it all became too much for Nakamura to bear. As the final confirmation of Japan's surrender reached the outpost, the last vestiges of his resolve crumbled. Alone in his room, he faced the ultimate humiliation of defeat, a disgrace too great for him to endure. In the dim light of the room, with the sounds of the city far below, he made a tragic decision. In the stillness of Room 48, General Nakamura performed the solemn and harrowing act of seppuku. The ritual, carried out with a ceremonial sword, was a final act of defiance against the dishonor he felt. His death was swift, his last moments filled with a profound silence that seemed to echo through the very walls of the hotel. The tragedy of Nakamura's end marked the beginning of an eerie chapter in the history of the Majestic Hotel. The once lively establishment, now shrouded in the shadow of his death, became a place of spectral mystery. Guests and staff began to report strange occurrences that defied explanation. The muffled sounds of sobbing, the clinking of a sake bottle in the dead of night, and the chilling presence of a shadowy figure at the window of room 48 all pointed to the lingering spirit of the tormented general. Late at night, the muffled sounds of sobbing would seep through the walls of room 48, mingling with the faint clinking of a sake bottle. The air would grow heavy with an inexplicable chill, causing the hairs on the back of one's neck to stand on end. Some guests, roused from sleep by an unseen presence, recounted seeing a shadowy figure in military attire standing by the window, gazing out with an expression of profound sorrow and longing. These ghostly apparitions and inexplicable events became the stuff of legend, whispered about in hushed tones by the hotel staff and the few brave guests who dared to stay in room 48. One particularly harrowing incident occurred in the early 1990s when a young couple, the Tanakas, arrived at the hotel to celebrate their honeymoon. Unaware of the room's dark history, they were assigned to room 48. That night, Mrs. Tanaka awoke to find her husband sitting at the edge of the bed, his eyes wide with terror as he stared into the darkness. When she called his name, he turned to her, his face pale and his voice a mere whisper. "There," he said, pointing toward the window. "A man. He's watching us." Though Mrs. Tanaka saw nothing, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over her. The air seemed to thicken with a palpable fear, and a cold draft chilled her to the bone. The next morning, the couple, visibly shaken and exhausted, demanded to be moved to another room. Their faces were ashen, their hands trembling, and the staff, familiar with such requests, obliged without question. Despite these unsettling occurrences, the Majestic Hotel remained a symbol of Kuala Lumpur's rich history. In 1984, it closed its doors, only to be repurposed as the National Art Gallery. Yet the ghostly tales persisted. Security guards patrolling the deserted halls at night would report strange phenomena, doors that opened and closed on their own, inexplicable cold drafts in warm rooms, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing in the silence, accompanied by whispers of "Gomen nasai," forgive me. In 2008, the Majestic Hotel underwent an extensive refurbishment to restore it to its former glory. The Majestic Hotel continues to stand as a testament to Kuala Lumpur's storied past, a blend of elegance and mystery. Despite the modern amenities and bustling activity, Room 48 remains a place of fascination and fear, drawing the curious and the brave alike. 2. The mysterious photograph. After successfully earning their SEP certification at the training center, Sarah and Mei Ling were buzzing with excitement for their first supernumerary flight, a Hong Kong turnaround. Despite the notoriously demanding nature of this flight route, which many seasoned crew members often dreaded, the pair of batch girls eagerly anticipated their maiden visit to the vibrant city, dreaming of savoring authentic dim sum and indulging in some serious shopping. With their Hong Kong flight scheduled to depart at 7 a.m., they had to report to the control station at around 3 a.m. for briefing and pre-flight preparations. The flight proceeded smoothly, and upon landing, the exhausted duo checked into the luxurious crew hotel, which offered breathtaking views of Victoria Harbor. Upon arriving at the hotel lobby and waiting for their room keys, Sarah and Mei Ling began asking around if any of the senior crew members would like to meet up for meals. It was a tradition within the company for the most junior crew, especially the S&Y crew, to extend such invitations. However, given the early morning flight and the crew's exhaustion, most of their colleagues politely declined, opting instead to rest and eat on their own schedules. After the day's exertions, Sarah and Mei Ling finally reached their room, a beautifully appointed space with modern furnishings and a stunning view of the iconic Peninsula Hotel opposite. Mei Ling, unable to fight the fatigue, collapsed onto her bed, still in her sarong kabaya, her suitcase left unpacked. Sarah chuckled at her batch girl's exhaustion and decided to capture the moment. She snapped a few photos with her phone, planning to share them with their batchmates for a good laugh later. When Mei Ling finally woke from her slumber, the pair of batchmates headed out for a late lunch and some shopping. They enjoyed their first taste of roast goose, savoring the flavors and the experience. After a day of exploring, having dim sum for dinner, and enjoying the famous Symphony of Lights, which was just a stone's throw away from their hotel, they returned to their room, content and ready for a good night's sleep before their return flight to Singapore the next day. As the night drew on, the girls quickly succumbed to sleep. The room was quiet, the only sounds being the distant hum of traffic and the occasional honk of a taxi from the street below. The sleek digital clock on the nightstand ticked away the hours, and soon the hotel was enveloped in the serene silence of the early morning. The following day, Sarah woke early, feeling refreshed. As she lay in bed, she began scrolling through the photos she had taken the previous night. She laughed at the pictures of Mei Ling sprawled on the bed in her kabaya and marveled at the pictures of their meals and views of Hong Kong. But her excitement and laughter died in her throat when she swiped to the next image. There on her phone screen was a photograph taken at 3:47 a.m. from the foot of their beds by someone who seemed to be extremely tall. The image showed both Sarah and Mei Ling sound asleep, tucked under their blankets. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow from the city lights outside. The angle of the photo was odd, as if someone had stood at the foot of their beds to capture it from a high angle. Sarah's heart raced. She had taken the pictures of Mei Ling herself, but who had taken this one? Panic set in as Sarah shook Mei Ling awake, showing her the mysterious photograph. Mei Ling's confusion turned to fear as she realized the implications. They had been alone in the room all night. No one else had access, and neither of them had got up to take the picture. The eerie possibility that someone, or something, had entered their room while they were asleep sent shivers down their spines. Desperate for answers, they decided to tell their crew in charge, as they believed it was a serious safety lapse if someone had entered their room. Their in-flight supervisor, equally concerned and puzzled, insisted they report the incident to the hotel's management. Together, they went to the hotel's front desk and explained the situation. The front desk manager, visibly concerned, assured them that security was tight and that no one could have entered their room without a key card. He promised to check the security footage to see if anyone had been in the hallway outside their room during the night. Later that day, the front desk manager called them back with the findings. He looked pale and uneasy as he spoke. "We reviewed the footage, and there was no sign of anyone entering or leaving your room after both of you returned at 10:51 p.m., he said. "However, there is something strange. At around 3:44 a.m., the cameras picked up a brief flicker of static and then nothing for about a minute. When the feed resumed, everything seemed normal." Sarah and Mei Ling exchanged worried glances. The unexplained photograph, time-stamped at 3:47 a.m., and the glitch in the security footage were too much to dismiss as mere coincidences. They thanked the front desk manager and returned to their room, but the sense of unease lingered. They quickly packed their bags, left the lights on, and talked in hushed tones until it was time for them to check out for their return flight back to Singapore. The photograph on Sarah's phone will always remain a mystery. 3. Mysterious shadow. Before smartphones and WhatsApp, laptop video calls were the pinnacle of staying connected across distances. For flight steward Daniel, Skype was his lifeline to his wife, Emily, whenever he was away on duty. After a short but tiring flight into Bangkok, Daniel was exhausted but knew his nightly Skype call with Emily was a routine he couldn't miss, even though it was just a night stop. They chatted for a while, sharing the day's events and how demanding the passenger profile was, even for a short flight. As was his habit, Daniel left the camera on while he continued unpacking and preparing for bed. Emily enjoyed watching him move about, bringing a sense of normality to their separated lives. Tonight, however, was different. Emily's voice, usually calm, sounded urgent. "Daniel, can you move to another room?" "Now," she requested, her tone leaving no room for argument. Confused and irritated by what he saw as an unreasonable demand, especially after such a tiring flight, Daniel protested. "Emily, I'm exhausted. Why should I change rooms now? What's going on?" "Just trust me and do it," Emily insisted, her voice trembling slightly. She was clearly distressed, but Daniel's fatigue and irritation clouded his judgment. "Emily, I've had a long day. I'm not moving just because you're feeling uneasy about something," he replied, lying down on the bed with a sigh of frustration. Desperation laced Emily's next words. "Daniel, I saw something. There was a shadow, but not yours. It moved behind you when you were on the bed. Daniel's annoyance evaporated, replaced by a chill that ran down his spine. He glanced at the screen, half expecting to see something himself, but the room appeared empty. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily's explanation was cut short as the call abruptly ended. The screen went black, leaving Daniel staring at his reflection, a growing sense of dread washing over him. He scrambled to call her back, but the connection failed repeatedly. Daniel's mind raced as he remembered the tales of haunted rooms shared among senior crew members. Perhaps there was some truth to them after all. He gathered his things quickly, his fatigue forgotten, and left the room, never looking back. At the front desk, he requested a room change. Surprisingly, the front desk acceded to his request without any questions. The next morning, he learned that the room had a history, a tragic one involving the murder of a guest in that very room. Daniel never spoke of the incident again, and the room remained just another ghost story shared in hushed tones among the airline crew. 4. Mysterious call at midnight. Night had fallen over a hotel in the eastern part of Singapore during the lunar ghost month, and the lobby was bathed in a dim, eerie glow. Brandon, the front desk manager, was used to the quiet monotony of the night shift. He enjoyed the stillness, the rare interruption of a check-in, or the occasional request from a guest. At 3:17 a.m., the phone rang, jolting Brandon from his drowsy state. He glanced at the caller ID. Room 204. Puzzled, he picked up the receiver. "Front desk, how can I assist you?" he asked, his voice steady. Silence greeted him. He strained to hear any background noise, but there was nothing, just an oppressive silence. After a few seconds, he hung up, dismissing it as a prank or a technical glitch. Minutes later, the phone rang again. Room 204. "Front desk," Brandon repeated, a hint of irritation creeping into his tone. Again, silence. This time he felt a shiver run down his spine. He hung up more forcefully, muttering under his breath about inconsiderate guests. For the third time the phone rang. Brandon snatched it up, his patience worn thin. "Listen, if this is some kind of joke, it's not funny." His voice echoed in the empty lobby. Once again, no response. His frustration morphed into a gnawing unease. Determined to confront the troublemaker, he decided to check the hotel's guest management system. He logged in and navigated to room 204. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he double-checked the records. No guest was assigned to room 204. The room was listed as vacant, having not been booked for several weeks due to ongoing maintenance. Brandon felt a cold sweat trickle down his back. He glanced towards the hallway leading to the lifts, the shadows seeming to grow darker, more menacing. Curiosity and fear battled within him. Summoning his courage, he decided to investigate. Grabbing a master key, he made his way to the second floor, each step echoing through the silent corridors. He reached room 204 and stood before the door, his heart pounding. Taking a deep breath, he inserted the key and turned the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a room cloaked in darkness. He flicked on the light switch, and the overhead lights flickered to life, casting a dim glow. The room appeared normal at first glance. Neatly made bed, empty chairs, and a pristine bathroom. But something felt off. An unnatural chill hung in the air, and the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. As Brandon stepped further into the room, he noticed the phone on the bedside table. It was off the hook, the receiver resting beside it. He picked it up, staring at it in confusion. Suddenly, he felt a cold breath against his ear, as if someone were whispering to him to leave. His heart raced, and without a second thought, he bolted from the room, leaving the door ajar behind him. He didn't stop running until he was back at the front desk, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Brandon looked around the empty lobby, the eerie silence now a menacing presence. The phone on his desk remained silent, but the memory of that cold breath lingered, a chilling reminder that some rooms are best left undisturbed. 5. Whispers from the past. The Grand Hyatt Taipei, one of the most luxurious hotels in Taipei, is renowned for its opulence and world-class service. However, behind its glamorous facade lies a chilling tale that few dare to speak of. Built on the grounds of a former prison from World War II, where countless lives were lost unjustly, the hotel is said to be haunted by restless spirits. The eerie stories surrounding the Grand Hyatt have become part of urban legend, sending shivers down the spines of curious guests who step inside. As soon as you enter the Grand Hyatt's main lobby, you'll notice something peculiar: two large talismans hanging near the elevator area. To those unfamiliar with Asian spiritual practices, they might seem like mere decorations. But for those who know the hotel's history, these talismans are protective charms, placed there to ward off wandering spirits from the past. It is said that during the hotel's early days, strange occurrences were frequent. Staff and guests reported hearing whispers in the night, footsteps echoing down empty hallways, and even glimpses of shadowy figures in mirrors. These incidents prompted the management to consult feng shui masters and spiritual practitioners who perform rituals to cleanse the space. Since then, the talismans have remained in place, serving as a safeguard for the hotel. One of the most chilling rumors about the Grand Hyatt is the method to check if your room is haunted. Upon checking in, many curious guests have tried inspecting behind the paintings on the walls. According to the legend, if you don't find a talisman behind the painting, it means your room is safe. However, if there is a talisman, it's a sign that the room has experienced paranormal activity, and the talisman was placed there to suppress the spirits. A traveler once shared his experience on a travel forum. Upon checking into his room, he curiously looked behind the painting and found a yellow talisman with strange symbols. That night, he couldn't sleep, feeling as though someone was standing at the foot of his bed, watching him. Although he saw nothing when he turned on the lights, the sensation persisted. The next morning, he hastily checked out and vowed never to return. A peculiar piece of advice often shared among those who have stayed at the Grand Hyatt is, never arrange your shoes neatly in your room. According to the legend, if you leave your shoes perfectly aligned, the spirits may see it as an invitation and slip their feet into them. Instead, you should leave your shoes in a messy arrangement to avoid attracting their attention. A housekeeping staff member once recounted a chilling story. One morning, while cleaning a room, she noticed the guest's shoes neatly placed beside the bed. However, what startled her was the sight of wet footprints leading from the shoes to the window, even though the room was completely dry and locked. When she asked the guest, he insisted he hadn't worn the shoes the previous night. This story quickly spread, and many guests now avoid arranging their shoes neatly during their stay. Many guests who have stayed at the Grand Hyatt have reported hearing whispers in the dead of night, as if someone were speaking right next to their ear. Some have even felt a cold breath on the back of their neck, despite being alone in the room. One American traveler shared his experience of being woken up at midnight by a knock on his door. When he opened it, the hallway was completely empty, but upon returning to his bed, he saw a faint, shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room, staring at him. The figure vanished as soon as he turned on the lights, but the fear lingered throughout the night. The Grand Hyatt Taipei remains a popular destination, attracting thousands of visitors each year. However, for those sensitive to the supernatural, this hotel is not just a place to rest, but also a test of courage. If you plan to stay here, keep these tips in mind. 1. Check behind the paintings. If you find a talisman, consider requesting a room change. 2. Don't arrange your shoes neatly. Leave them in a messy state to avoid attracting spirits. 3. Avoid staying alone if you are easily spooked. The whispers and shadowy figures might keep you up all night. The Grand Hyatt Taipei is not just a luxurious hotel, but also a place steeped in chilling tales from the past. And if you're brave enough to stay, be prepared for the possibility of encountering uninvited guests.
If you love stories about supernatural forces and chilling mysteries, don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe to the MRCat YouTube channel so you won't miss any exciting videos. Your support is the motivation for us to keep bringing even more fascinating content. Thank you so much, everyone.